I wonder why people even question how gold's strength has it's been so resilient, and Bitcoin corrected and the market sold off, yet gold's been so resilient. And I guess my point, Dunnigan, would be how many more times do you need to hear this before it sinks in? Again, another record being made. First 6 months of the year of 2024 represent the most gold central banks of the world have ever purchased, ever. And it only superseded last year's first 6 months. And you, at the top of the list, you have Turkey and India, of course, China, you have Poland. And it reminded me of something that, and I went and I dug this up because a couple years ago, Adam Glapinski, who still is the head of the Polish Central Bank, said something very interesting. In my mind, he tipped his hand, because in 2021, he said, and I'm going to read this to you. He says, he was trying to explain why they were expanding the country's gold reserves by 100 tons. And when he announced the plan to expand it, he said the following. He said, our gold reserves are a matter of financial security and stability. Gold will retain its value even when someone cuts off the power to the global financial system, destroying traditional assets based on electric accounting records. Of course.
In the first half of 2024, central banks around the world made an unprecedented move, purchasing more gold than ever before in recorded history. Leading the charge are countries like Turkey, India, China, and Poland, all quietly but steadily increasing their gold reserves. This isn't just about diversification. It's a strategic defense against a potential collapse of the global financial system. Adam Lipinski, head of the Polish Central Bank, emphasized that gold is their safeguard against catastrophic scenarios where traditional assets could be wiped out. As Andy Schectman explains, these actions might signal a global effort to decouple from the US dollar and protect against the vulnerabilities of the US economy.
We do not assume that this will happen, but the saying goes, forewarned is always insured, and the central bank is required to be prepared for even the most unfavorable circumstances. That is why we see a special place for gold in our foreign exchange management process. And here again, they're buying truckloads. I don't know if any of you have seen that movie that the Obamas produced. I didn't know they produced it till after I watched it. It's quite frightening, actually. It's a movie where the whole grid goes down and the internet goes down and the ability to communicate goes down, and how fast things go pear-shaped. And you can only imagine, when you contrast something like what Glapinski is saying with the Microsoft outage recently, and then even more concerning to me, it's interesting. You see the insider sell so much leading into the end of the second quarter, right? And then we see the biggest one-day drop on the Nikkei, a massive drop in South Korea and in other parts of the world, and the biggest number drop ever in the Dow. Of course, they're all out. But when that happens, all of those exchanges go dark. Robinhood and whatever. What am I trying to say? Vanguard and TD Ameritrade, all of these, and Schwab, and yeah, they all go blank, right? At the same time, what are the odds? And when you hear him say something like this, it brings back to, I think it really underscores the whole point of counterpart liability, of what would happen if the grid went down. We keep hearing about that, little pieces, EMP and grid and electric and this movie, and how everything is it's all digits on a computer screen, including the banks. So I don't know. I thought that was kind of interesting that he said that. But here again, you got the central banks buying more gold than at any time ever. But this has been something that I've been saying to you since 2020 now, over and over and over and over again. And it goes back to what you and I were talking about before we turned on the camera about the little man rule and how the big guy's always ahead of the curve. Well, there is no bigger guy than the central banks, not only in wealth, but in understanding and in foresight and in the playbook. So yeah, I think it's very illuminating. And then of course you have the Dutch National Bank, who I've talked a lot about, and the revaluation accountant. He recently said this has been a political decision. If there is a financial crisis, the gold price will skyrocket, and official gold reserves can be used to underpin a new gold standard, according to the Dutch National Bank. Little crumbs that are laid at our feet. Well, you got the heads of central bank, one guy saying that it allows you to start over with a new gold standard, and another guy saying that it allows us to protect ourselves against the grid going down, in essence, and everything is digital. I mean, what more does a guy need to hear? And then when you see the central banks buying it at a level the world has never seen, and you see the exchanges all in unison suffer the same issue the day that the market goes down, it's like, are these tests? Are these warnings? Are these crumbs? I don't know. You tell me. This is where I try and take all of these things and put them together. My mind goes right to it. Hell yeah, this is a warning. This is a test. This is a omen. And listening to them say these things, how do you not think that? I think the old statement, you don't own it if you don't hold it. I don't know that I really believe that, but there is something to be said for the elimination of any and all counterparty risk.
As pension funds eye massive $200 million investments in metals, Andy Schectman sounds the alarm on an impending financial upheaval. Central banks across the globe are struggling to normalize their economies, only to see their systems teeter on the brink of collapse. The UK, Japan, and even the US have all faced near disasters after attempts to raise interest rates, revealing just how precarious the global financial ecosystem truly is. Schectman highlights the stark choice we're facing: succumb to inflation or risk letting the entire system implode. With the wealthy already feeling the heat from volatile asset swings and central banks pivoting under pressure, the future of the US dollar and our own financial security hangs in the balance.
That's what I was saying to you last week. It's going to happen, and it'll wipe out the industry. And it will. I mean, you get a pension that says, I want to put $200 million in metals. I'm dead serious about it. What are you going to do? It's too big for us. No, of course not. And it's real. And I think those are the people that are waking up, because these are the people that are seeing very large swings in their asset values, in their net worth. And, the wealthy own assets. The wealthy have bank accounts, sure, but the wealthy own lots of assets. And the swings on the up have been fantastic. But I think when they see the swings on the down, they get very nervous. And if you take a practical look at things and you are actually honest with yourself, you look at the state of the world and where it could be, to only focus on a mainstream mantra is foolhardy. All it takes is for one of these people to have their eyes open to some of the real numbers and the real reporting that you do with all of your guests every day. Watch one of those videos and their whole, it's just a poof moment. And then they realize that they better do something. And as we grow nearer to such a pivotal moment, like the big BRICS meeting in October, and of course, the elephant in the room, the election in November, I think people are beginning to kind of reflect a little bit upon what the future looks like. So yeah, I think it will happen. I really do. And when you look at the situation, if you're just honest with yourself, it started in the UK. They tried to normalize, it started with us in 2019. We tried to normalize the balance sheet, and you get the reverse repo, or you get the repo market blow up and everything goes upside down, they pivot. And then you get the UK, they try to austerity and normalize their balance sheet, and their pensions almost blow up, they pivot. And then you get us raise rates to 5%, and the banks start blowing up, and now we're talking about pivoting. And you get the Japanese who do this and raise rates just a little bit, and strengthen the yen just a little bit, and everything blows up and they pivot. This is a situation that has been created by messing with Mother Nature, by suppressing interest rates globally for so long, creating and incentivizing so much debt that the bill has to be paid. And you're beginning to see that there are very few outs. It's either succumb to inflation or let the system blow up, continue to print and give in to inflation, or let the system blow up. And that's what you're seeing in all these Western systems, that we're teetering. And I don't know, it just goes to show how fragile the whole ecosystem really is. And it's the wealthy who do well in an inflationary environment because their assets go up in value. And so you see even the hint of deflation and the assets start to crumble. And so that's why they always choose inflation, because the wealthy get wealthier, not that they're losing purchasing power, but their assets go higher. But it's true. And then you talk about, being lied to real quick. You have right before Silicon Valley Bank failed, you had, the Fed, Powell in front of Congress saying, that Powell said, nothing about the data suggests we've tightened too much, right? And then 2 days later, Silicon Valley Bank fails. And you go back and you go all the way back to Bernanke saying the subprime crisis is contained, and boom, it blows up. And the way they said there is no inflation, okay, it's transitory, okay, fine, it's structural, okay, it's going away, but the numbers are all a bunch of lies. And when you talk about Silicon Valley Bank, the FDIC reported $600 billion in unrealized losses in the whole banking system, and the Fed always claims to be looking at all of the data, and they're supposed to be the key supervisors of the banking system. They would have had Silicon Valley's books. They would have had it all, and they didn't. And they jack up rates, and the whole system collapses. And here again, after you see one-day drop, you have Jeremy Siegel, trotted out almost in tears, begging for a 150-point basis rate cut. Here again, to go, not only would that be the worst thing to do, because it would only exacerbate the unwinding of the carry trade, because it's, if the yen goes higher, or the interest rate goes higher, or the interest rate received from U.S. Treasuries goes lower, well, the yen carry trade unwinds further. And I mean, they're not thinking this out, but here again, giving in to austerity, giving in to lowering rates in a weak dollar, and those aren't good things. And it's what they have always chosen, and this is what Trump wants to do too, and which kind of bothers me. He's advocating for a weaker dollar and for lower interest rates, and Vance is talking about, well, maybe the dollar shouldn't be the world reserve currency. Where'd we hear that before? Oh yeah, knucklehead Jared Bernstein. So I don't know that anyone's going to be able to pull us out of this, but what I do think is that we are destined for much higher inflation as a result of a lower dollar, a lower interest rates. But what does that do to the debt? Who wants to buy our debt?